Welcome to Modern Anarchy, the podcast featuring real conversations with conscious objectors to the status quo. I'm your host, Nicole.
I tried to keep her quiet, but she's screaming outside of me. I tried to keep her hiding, oh, shut up. I tried to keep her quiet, but she's a wild, wild woman.
Hello, my sweet anarchist community. Hello. Today is a very special episode because it is the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. I need some cheers, but I'm recording by myself, talking to the void. Hi, everyone. Cheers to 1 year. I wanted to make a special episode where we just slow down, and I just talk about the last year and how this podcast has changed me, how I'm feeling about it. My thanks to all of you. And yeah, there is no specific path to this conversation. As with all other episodes, part of the anarchy, I think, is coming in and just speaking from the heart, because scripted stuff, I guess, is a way of art, but I like to just be me and show up and to let you have that. I feel like that's the most authentic, real, vulnerable thing I can do each week, just show up and speak. So yeah, I hope all of y'all enjoy this episode and just taking a moment to pause. I also have a meditation at the end as well, one of my favorites that I learned in my yoga teacher training. So I'm excited to share that with all of you. And so if any of that sounds interesting, tune in. This is your episode. We're gonna chit chat. And if none of that sounds interesting, then just tune in next week. We're gonna have a true crime episode, which, what? How does that relate to the podcast? You will see. You will see. All right, y'all. Tune in. Are you trying to sit? Well, are you trying to sit down? Come sit, fat one. I can't start until you sit down. Come on. Everyone's waiting. Okay. I'm sorry. We can wait. Come sit, dude. Okay, there you go. Wow. All right. Y'all don't even know. She literally just sat onto my lap to walk and get off to the other side. This is going to be a very different episode than all the other podcast episodes that I've ever released before. I don't even know what to say. I feel like I'm talking into a void. It's so much easier when I'm just connecting with another human than to go on my own adventure of my own thoughts and let them ramble and go on as I try and communicate to all of you. So today's episode is very special and a little bit different than the ones that we usually have on the podcast, because it's the 1-year anniversary of the podcast, which is actually a really big milestone for me personally, and I just wanted to take a moment to reflect and to slow down and just talk about where we've gone in the last year and what I've learned about myself and all of the good stuff. So I'm incredibly nervous because I think every other time I'm just vibing with someone else in front of me, right? I'm just bouncing off ideas, being my goofy whatever self, and I can feel the energy flow or not flow and try and adjust appropriately, right? But talking into a void, I don't know. I don't have this other sounding board of what I'm putting out. And I don't normally talk to myself, so this is a new activity for me. I don't know how YouTubers do this all the time or other podcasters. Who knows? Maybe it's a skill I'll develop in due time after today. But I think, when I try to imagine who is listening to this podcast, I'm sure I'm talking to a ton of social justice warriors out there who are just as equally passionate about changing this world for the better and providing more space for the diversity of the human experience. I always say that a lot in the podcast, but I really hope that's what this show gets to be, right? You can connect with someone that maybe you would have never met in your circle, in your town, in, whatever way of walks of life, so that we can learn from other people, from other humans, from other lived experiences, And I think there's so much that makes us different, right? We're each unique individual beings, but at our cores, we still have these same things. I think we want to feel connected. I feel like we are all social creatures and we want community. We want to know that we're not alone, right? That comes up throughout the podcast in these various episodes. And so despite how intricately diverse we can be, we equally, I feel like at our core, have these same ideals of wanting love and space to be ourselves and space to be accepted. And I mean, that's definitely what the podcast has done for me. I live in Chicago, right? Which is an incredibly diverse city, but at the same time, you live your life, and if you're not always interacting with different crowds, different social groups, then you just might never get to have conversations with so many different lives. There's just so much to learn from other people's journeys and the way that they perceive the world. And I think that's also one of the main reasons that I am excited to become a psychologist, to get to explore these things and to learn from having such an intimate relationship with so many, internal thoughts and views. And it is a lot to think about how that's going to change me in the next couple of years as I start my therapy practicum next year and go deeper into this practice of holding space for healing. Obviously, this podcast is a little bit different, right? I'm almost acting like a journalist, interviewing people, hearing their stories, having fun dialogue. It's definitely a different space, but I do think that they both tap into the beauty of our narratives, the beauty of our lives, the beauty of our meaning making. I think back to the episode on abortion early on, and we talked about the importance of meaning, the importance of meaning making. In my existentialist class for psychology, we've joked about the fact that cats, aren't stressed out because they don't have that same desire to make meaning of their experiences that our consciousness has. And so when we go through this world that is often chaotic and sometimes out of our controls, we're going to want to make meaning out of that, to make sense, to feel like there's some sort of linearness to our lives. We make meaning out of everything. And the crazy thing is, you can make really positive meanings and you can make really negative meanings. And how do we find that balance between what's true in reality and what's the negative anxieties of our brain? As someone who has suffered with anxiety, let me tell you, that is a painful road, right? Another post-it note I have on my board is that non-proportional anxiety is paralyzing. So, I mean, naturally, all of us are going to have anxiety to one way or the other, but when it becomes paralyzing, that's when it's really tough. How do we get out of those spaces? And I am just a baby and learning how to do that for myself, right? I'm learning how do I move through fear. I keep thinking that the nerves before I present or the nerves before I rock climb are just going to disappear. And the reality is those are there for a reason, right? Anxiety is normal. Those fears are normal, but are we able to take that next step through it and go through it? Sometimes I do my class presentations shaking, or I'll be up there teaching a yoga class and I just am nervous and it's in my voice and I can feel it in my body. And I mean, starting this podcast was a huge leap for me. Y'all might find this crazy, but I have definitely suffered with social anxiety my entire life. I have always worried that other people hated me. Or actually, worried's not even the right answer, I guess I would say. I knew that everyone hated me until they proved otherwise. And that's how I went out into the world, thinking that that was just my basic reception, And so it definitely made having conversations such a anxiety-provoking thing, because I was already coming from a place of fear. And learning to love myself has been the only way that I've found out of that, because when I love myself, then it truly doesn't matter what other people think about me, because at the end of the day, that says more about themselves than it does about me. And that was life-changing. And I still suffer with this all the time, where you can get into these patterns of thought where you're like, oh, what if they think this? And before you know, you slip down a full like stress spiral. As I enter into finals week, I surely know what that means. Then your head can just run away into a narrative of stress and anxiety, and it's being able to pause and recognize that, oh, I got here, and now that I've seen it, that's the first step. Now we're going to start back again. And I don't know, my therapist said to me, when I first was trying to come to terms with anxiety and these thoughts and things like that, she said, I'll probably never get rid of anxiety. And I cried about this and cried because I felt like, you mean I can't conquer this thing? I can't, And I think more so what that did was allow space for the ability to mess up and come to terms with it, because it wasn't going to go anywhere. So it changed my relationship with it. Rather than like, oh, I have to conquer this so that it's gone, I came to have like a more, I guess, passive relationship to a degree, where it was just like, oh, okay, anxiety will happen. And I'm going to move through it. I'm not going to fight it. And I guess that's where mindfulness comes in. And now we've had a conversation about psychology. So if you're interested in sticking around, I am going to be talking about the last year of this podcast, because it's the 1-year anniversary and it's time to reflect, to celebrate, and to just talk about where we have been in the last year. First, when I think about who I'm speaking to out there in the ether, who are you out in the void listening to this podcast? The numbers, the analytics that I see each week. I wish I could see each one of your faces as I speak. But I'll imagine you're out there listening and you're somewhere feeling like me in this world, or you feel strong about your beliefs and you want to keep questioning why and growing and learning and hoping to support the making of a brighter future for humanity. And so I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking to you. This is crazy. Like, I just told myself I was going to make a podcast, and then I did, and I didn't necessarily know what the whole show's purpose was going to be, but I knew that I would figure it out. And so to be able to come to this point a year later, knowing that I always showed up for myself, and knowing that even when I was stressed out in school and carrying my job, I was able to show up. I never let myself down. I think that is a beautiful thing that I just want to capture and be proud of myself for just a moment. I'm sure, like everyone, you can understand that imposter syndrome is super real. I even now think, like, who the fuck cares about you, Nicole? Like, why are you speaking about these things? Who's going to actually care on this deep of a level to hear about your inner workings of this last year? And yeah, that may be true. And I'm also going to say the people that are tuning in each week care, right? That's the balancing of these thoughts. Because maybe somehow you've connected with me and my pain and my joys and my personality, whatever it is, or you've connected with the people or the mission or whatever it is, you're here. And so I'm going to trust in that's why you're here. And so I'm going to keep talking. Yeah. And I also wanted to say thank you. Thank you for coming back each week and for showing up, and to get the first couple of Patreon pledges have meant so much to me. I have no job, and so I am just trusting. I am listening to my heart. I am building this movement, and I want to make change with this podcast, and I see it grow each week. And so I know that it is possible, and I know that each one of us listening together can make a really big change in the world, and I have faith in that. Not religious faith, but I guess some sort of cosmic faith. But yeah, this last year has been incredible. I've changed so much through this podcast to show up each week to release episodes that I feel like I was annoying in, to release episodes where I said where I would like yeah, a million times and be like, damn, bitch, can you just stop? Like all of that sort of stuff comes up. And like to continue to release all of that and to have people continue to check in and say that like we're enjoying this as I don't know if there are words for that, because it's just been such a natural unpouring of my personality and all of its goofiness that sometimes I'm afraid to show the world. And to have people keep checking in and enjoying this and saying such positive things is a form of love that I haven't maybe even given myself yet, right? And I'm learning to give in that complete freedom. I'm sure that comes up in those moments where I feel a little bit judgmental, right? But 3 cheers for my therapist. She is amazing. I keep going and we keep digging, and it gets harder and better at the same time, as with life, right? The yes and always. I wanted to read something that I wrote on April 2nd of 2021. I guess this was before I'd even posted a single episode, before I had released anything to the world. I was journaling and I wrote this for myself, and now I'm going to share it with y'all. Woo, we'll see if can I do this in a smooth tone, or am I going to cry? Okay. This is the beginning of criticism, of doubts, of risk, and it's also the beginning of change. Opening conversations to normalize the reality we are all facing. Trust in your goodness, empathy for humanity, and let others feel your presence. You will doubt yourself, and that's okay. Come back here and check in with yourself. Spend time questioning yourself and ensuring that you are always pursuing your truth, your goals, and honoring the beauty of your creativity with pride. Your ability to connect with such a range of people is going to shine and serve you so well. Trust in yourself. Trust in the beauty of your mind, the authenticity of your soul, and the passion to change the world, and the people will come. Be persistent. Follow your dreams and bring those around you with you. And yeah, the moments of doubt were very real. Let me tell you, I think there was a million times while recording where I was like, is this going anywhere? Is this an interesting episode? Is anyone going to want to listen to this stuff? I mean, that stuff flies left and right? And a year later, those words still are so important to me, because I think I'm just a human, and so there are times where maybe I don't feel that same love for myself, right? There might be moments, frustration. I think it's getting better where it's more consistent now, but I think it's natural to go through times where maybe that's not as easy of an understanding of ourselves to grasp onto. And it's been such an amazing gift to have a community of listeners that comes back each week to tell me that I'm on the right path and you're enjoying the podcast. And if you are, like, honestly, can you reach out in some way? Like, I don't care if it's a review. I don't care if it's a DM. I just want to know, like, who are the people listening? Who are the people I'm talking to each week? I want to see your Instagram stories of your dog, or whatever. I want to connect. I want to know, because I think a lot of us conscious objectors, or whatever we want to call ourselves, that are hoping to build a better future, a different paradigm, sometimes can feel really alone because society doesn't always agree with us, or society doesn't always understand us, or makes judgments about what we do and what we believe in. And I just want you to know that if you're out there and you feel like that you're not alone, that this space is here, and that I'm going to keep showing up with you each week I decided at least to make another 1-year contract with myself. So let's do this for another year. Let's keep going. Let's talk. Let's continue this. I am excited to learn with all of you, and the project that I have started, and the movement that we have begun on Patreon of supporting nonprofits and other mutual aids. I am excited to see how we're going to keep growing together and make this show into something even bigger to support the real change that we're talking about. So I'm really happy, and I'm really excited to keep learning and showing up each week for you and for myself. And yeah, I made a promise that I would do this for 1 year and check in regardless of how I felt about it, regardless of how it went, regardless of how many listens. And this show has grown in ways that I couldn't have even imagined, and has gained so many listeners that I am just so truly, truly grateful for all of you that I'm sure are spreading this podcast to your friends, are sharing an episode, are telling people about it, because it doesn't just grow like this well, I have no money, so I'm not doing any ads actually. So this is just growing from words of mouth, right? Of people talking, of sharing. And so every single new listener that I get, I have to thank all of you listeners before for sharing and for, yes, continuing with me on this journey. So thank you. Thank you. I wanted to answer 3 questions and do these each year is what I'm thinking. And so, how has the podcast changed you in the last year? I think I'm definitely more confident in who I am and what I have to say. That's pretty freaking cool. Like, I love that. Wasn't always this bold and like embodied with my personality and my just goofiness. I love that people find that funny. That's great. I love that I've just been able to be myself and to connect with so many people, and that has changed me in so many ways. And I think I just see in this last year, like, felt just a drop of the breadth of the diversity of lives, right? Like, so many different lives. I really truly do look at all of us as like little galaxies of meaning, of stories, of relationships that make up your universe. And so it's just anytime I get to tap into a person's universe and gaze at their stars and their planets and talk to them, I think that's such a beautiful thing, truly, right? Like, just to get outside of our galaxy, our head, and to see other people is such a beautiful gift of this podcast. And so I just want to thank all of the guests that have come on. The sharing of vulnerability has deeply changed my ability to show up and be vulnerable in other spaces as well. And I don't think there are enough ways actually to explain how this podcast has changed me. It's kind of insane. So I don't even have words other than the fact that I'm not the same person. Certainly not the same person from when I started. Yeah. And the second question is, what is one area where you are still learning to have compassion for yourself? I think right now, as I record this, and I'm thinking, who's going to want to listen to me ramble about this podcast? So we're going to have compassion for the imposter syndrome that is continuing as I breathe right now. There have been times where I'm like, damn, I did not listen well. I maybe like took over the container space and just like shared my story when someone is sharing like a deep, vulnerable thing. And those are moments where I'm like, damn, I should have been a better listener. And I think listening is a skill. I think having conversation is a skill and an art. And I think I'll get better as I go on, as I learn how to, have these deep conversations and to get even closer to the core of what it means for all of us to be human, those shared emotions, to make this podcast both as unique and as universal all at the same time, right? Quantum mechanics, here we go. So that's definitely an area I'm still learning to have compassion for myself as I like learn how to do this better. And the less I edit, the more I love myself, right? Because sometimes I'll edit chunks out and it's been a process to be like, no, like leave your goofy laugh. Leave that airy, sucking in air, awkward laugh of yours because it's you, right? Like that's authentic. That's your stuff. And so that has also been another area of mine that I have been learning to have compassion, or just like not taking breaths. I feel like sometimes on this podcast I'm just like and like don't breathe. So yeah, there's definitely still a lot. Don't let me fool you if you think that I come off super confident every week and that I have no problems with learning to have space and love for myself. They're definitely still there on this podcast. So, but I guess my relationship with them has changed a little bit. I really keep trying to keep that beginner's mind, right? Where like, yeah, I fell off the tricycle, but like you can't learn how to ride if you don't just get back on. And you learn, right? You learn from your mistakes. We learn from that attempt, and then we try to do better each time. And so I think that's kind of changed my relationship to it all. But yeah, those are some of the areas I'm still holding compassion for. And then the last question is, in what ways are you proud of yourself? Try to counterbalance that last question. I am proud of myself for doing this every week, y'all. You don't understand because you're not me, right? I have been doing grad school. I used to be working a job during this time too, which I can't anymore with school, but like used to be doing that as well and trying to balance all of these different things. And so I'm just so proud of myself for being able to be consistent in this, to show up, because I don't have an audio team. I don't have a promoting team. This is literally just me doing everything, the graphics, everything, literally everything. So for me to have done this and to find a routine that has made this be able to be doable for myself in the last year is just such a dedication and practice of self-love to show up for something that I promised to do for myself, because I really could have quit at any point, but now I've established a relationship with all of y'all, and I tell myself that as long as one person keeps coming in to listen to each episode each week, I will continue making this podcast, because if just one life is changed, then it's all worth it. And I've gotten so many messages from people who feel like this podcast has changed them for the better. And that's all I need to hear, right? Like, that's it. Like, if you can better one life during your existence, then you've lived a life worth living. If not, let's say try and increase the number of lives that we can improve for the better. And so I'll keep making this. I'll keep showing up. And yeah, coming out about my abortion on this podcast was probably the bravest thing that I could have ever done recently in my life. That was the one thing that I always thought I could never tell my family, that I could never tell my mother, because I was worried that she wouldn't be able to forgive me. And so it was one of those things that I just like really kept to myself. And so to come out about that and to stand tall in my truth, which a lot of that is through the podcast, getting to share space with another post-abortive person. It changes you. It changes your ability to stand tall in your truth. And that, I think, God, if I could say anything, that's how this podcast has changed me. And then I hope that helps change you, right? Like, if you resonate with these things and you're like, fuck, like no one else is saying this stuff, and you hear this podcast and it makes you feel like you're not alone, then that's it. That's it. I'll keep putting it out. We are here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to keep getting better together, y'all. This is it. This is our community. And I think about Nat, and we had that episode, the Anarchy of Love. And I truly believe that the highest form of anarchy is coming to this world with love, coming with compassion first, and to choose that over violence, over judgment, over all these other things that we do when we're afraid naturally, right? And so to choose love, I think, is the highest form of anarchy. And so I want to keep doing that. And I think, and I've definitely talked about it, love is not all the joyous. It's also the sad, the hard, the failures. It's all of that together, and to keep showing up. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't have any final wise words of wisdom here, other than the fact that I'm just thankful for each one of you that keeps checking in each week, and for the Patreons that support this podcast, that support me, that support the movement for change. I just want to say thank you. Thank you. I figured we could close out the episode with a meditation. So if you're like, meditation's too hippie woo-woo for me, that's fine. Dip out. Come back next week. We'll probably be talking about sex, drugs, or rock and roll. And that's totally great. And if you're into the meditation, then we're going to drop down into a moment. And I'll invite you, if you have the space, to close your eyes and to relax, to connect with your breath. Take a deep inhale through the nose. Exhale out through the nose. Deep inhale. Exhale out. If you have the space, I'm going to ask you to sit up really tall, flat back. Relax your shoulders away from your ears. And we're going to take a loving kindness meditation. So stick with me. So, bringing to your mind's eye or imagining first yourself. And then you're going to repeat silently to yourself. May I be happy. May I find joy. And may I be at peace. May I find joy. May I be happy, and may I find peace. And now you're going to bring to your mind's eye and focus on someone that you love, a friend, a family member, or even a pet. Then repeat silently after me as we think about them. May they find joy, may they be happy, and may they be at peace. May they be happy, may they find joy, and may they be at peace. Now you're going to focus on someone that you have negative feelings towards. This could be someone that you hate, are angry with, frustrated by, and repeat silently with me. May they be happy, may they find joy, and may they be at peace. May they be happy. May they find joy. And may they be at peace. And now we're going to bring our focus to the whole world. I know it's big. We're just going to imagine to the scale that we can. And may we all be happy. May we all find joy. And may we all be at peace. May we all be happy. May we all find joy. And may we all be at peace. Namaste. Y'all never seen my yoga side before. Y'all just seen my goofy podcaster side. So that's the yoga side. But honestly, it's one of my favorite meditations. I always think it's good to let go of that anger and instead replace it with love. That's the Anarchy, right? So y'all, it's been a pleasure. I will see you next week for year 2. Bye. If you enjoyed today's episode, then leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're a part of the Anarchist community, then follow us on Instagram or nominate a guest for the show by sending in a letter to modernanarchypodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.